Emotion regulation, they are the things that you do on a regular basis to keep your emotion regulated, okay? So like I talked about earlier, if if you have a big to-do list, you're nowhere on your list, you don't have anything that you're doing that has nothing to do with work, being a sister, a daughter, a good friend, wife, whatever it is, a mom, you probably aren't engaging in very many in activities that inspire you. Activities that inspire you, the side effect is happy, okay? So in DBT, they talk about the importance of, especially if you've got a lopsided kind of an imbalance of like to do's and have to do's, the importance of increasing your pleasant activities, okay? So when I was doing the tennis team and I was in a funk, I would increase my days of hitting the ball, okay? I would make sure to do that. So the G, get your groove on. Do things that you dig daily. Can people speak to that? What do you do that you love to do? Do people, it can just be anything. Yeah.
I go work out at 5 in the morning, and it's really fun, and there's like a whole group of us, and we're really silly.
Okay, perfect. It regulates emotion, exercise. Okay, other people? What do you?
I beat up people who go work out at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. It's more sleep. And so it's more of a shortened state of well-being because it feels good right when you're beating them up, not so much later on. But good. Okay. Yeah. All right. What are other things?
I eat on time.
You what?
I try to eat on time.
You eat on time. Okay, that's a great example. It's a great example of emotion regulation. Okay, other ideas, things that you do that, who thinks that maybe they could use a little more like activities that inspire them? Yeah, okay. Okay, so maybe that could be in a commitment letter today. I'm just thinking. Okay. Good homework. Okay, so I'm going to be texting all of you, hey, where's your letter? How are you doing on that? I would be really busy. Okay, so doing things on a regular basis that you love to do. Resting intuitively, we all know, I mean, in inpatient programs for eating disorders, and I'm sure this is a rule at other inpatient programs, you don't get to oversleep. You have a certain amount of sleeping time, and you don't get to sleep because they're using sleep to check out. Okay, so I'll assess that with clients, and people know, and if they're really upfront, they know when they're resting intuitively, they needed to sleep that much, and they know when they're using it as a way to cope. So people are highly dysregulated. I think more with undersleep. It's why they use it in warfare, and I've never understood it until I had a baby. I'm like, you're serious? Okay, so somebody would say just a little something to me like, hey, Signe. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to sleep. Okay, so undersleep, oversleep, they're both dysregulating. So I was just talking to a client the other day who slept a lot of hours, like 14 hours. And she just woke up and just was super sluggish the rest of the day. So that's very emotionally dysregulating. And any of these, okay, so undersleep, oversleep, steering clear of things that alter your consciousness. So, I think that when you adopt a mindfulness practice and you're doing something on a regular basis that quiets your mind, that relaxes you, I see people who maybe don't have a problem with alcohol but drink a little more than they'd like to, booze will go down. Okay, if you're doing this thing over here. People who are being foodie but maybe they don't have a full-blown eating disorder, it's more in the subclinical zone. If you're doing a mindfulness practice on a regular basis, food will get more intuitive. Do you see what I'm saying? So things over here, something doesn't get triangulated in as much. It stays more intuitive. You have a glass or two of wine instead of the bottle. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, or maybe a couple days a week instead of every night. But I do notice a direct correlation between things that you do over here affecting a third party or thing getting pulled in. Okay, undue physical illness. Physical illness, I know that when I am getting the flu, so the first couple of days when you're starting to just feel kind of off, but you don't know what's going on, I know that that can be kind of a confusing signal. It feels maybe like you're getting depressed, but maybe you're just getting sick, you're not really sure. And we know, I don't know when the last time was that you were sick or you had a surgery, it's highly dysregulating when you feel off, okay? So attending to your body's health signals. Navigate away from negative self-talk. We're going to talk a lot more about this. I think this is one of the biggest ones. Work on your affirmations. We're going to have a slide on affirmations. Desire to be free. So instead of, I'm trying to not say things in the negative, instead of, don't do behaviors that backfire. So desire to be free of behaviors that backfire. Honor your future self. We talked about those. Eat in response to your body's intelligence. Listen to real hunger. So people get very preoccupied if they're feeding a body that's not asking to be fed, there's no hunger, but you're eating anyway. or if you're not feeding a body that's asking to be fed. Preoccupation tends to happen with either of those extremes, okay? Discover what gives you a sense of self-mastery. You build mastery when you do things that make you feel confident. Again, so the clients of ours that aren't doing, that don't have enough like-to-dos or have-to-dos, they don't have a sense of self-mastery. They aren't doing something on a regular basis that makes them feel good. And it does. It makes you feel confident, and it does help regulate emotion. Can the next one? Okay, good. Okay, so we're going to do this, and then we're going to go to a behavioral chain analysis. So before we do that, this is a great analogy or a metaphor that I got from Christopher Fairburn. And he talked about, you want to, so say when a client comes in, you want to kind of start off by talking to them about whatever their problem behavior is, okay? So it could be somebody who's using a self-interest behavior, a foodie behavior, interpersonal conflict, whatever it is, okay? You want to imagine that the problem is the house of cards, okay? So imagine that the problem is a house of cards. And in therapy, we want to think of, we are going to bring the house down, okay? And we're not going to bring the house down by pulling off one of the top cards, okay? So in my opinion, when somebody is dealing with overeating, for example, a diet would be an example of a top card, okay? So addressing the food as the target behavior, in my opinion, is the top card. And that's why they usually fail, okay? So it's not very sustainable. It's addressing something that is a side effect instead of the things that lead to, kind of the lead up to the disordered eating, okay? So what we do is we figure out, all right, so the house of cards in my caseload is symbolic for, a metaphor for the disordered eating. And for that individual, it's very different for everybody. There's going to be, we're trying to figure out what are the structural pieces maintaining the symptom of the problem. Okay, so for some clients, it might be speaking truth. So they're saying yes to things that they want to say no to. And it leaves them with internal conflict. Okay, and then they're feeding as a way to push that down. All right? For another client, it might be just self-esteem, not feeling good about herself. Okay, so then maybe that's what we target with her. It's really different for every person, but again, what is the behavior? So target behavior being defined as, what is the behavior that if we address it, it's going to make the most amount of change? And figuring out the target behavior, I always think it's kind of interesting where when they come in, I always kind of think that, and of course I'm learning all the time, but I always kind of think that I know what the target behavior is. But if you trust that they know more about themselves than you know about them, they're so much more helpful in figuring out the target behavior. So it's really fun to bring them in on it because they have the truth. Okay, so target behavior, the behavior that creates the most amount of change. So what I'm going to do next is go to a behavioral chain analysis, and I'm going to give you an example of what might happen in my caseload. And then I'm hoping that somebody can bring up a case that they have, just like a little vignette of a real case or a made-up case, and then we'll split up into little groups, and we'll come back and talk about what you would consider the target behaviors to be, okay? So just to make sure and to kind of preface it, emotion regulation, we want to be thinking of, it's like, oh, can you go to the next one, Ken? Sorry. In emotion regulation, okay, we want to be thinking of the ones that I just talked about in the acronym grounded, get grounded, okay? The first chain, those basically relate to the first chain. So the first chain are, it's like, you want to think of it as the domino that hits all the others, okay? So you want to think of them in terms of being either internal or external vulnerabilities. So internal vulnerabilities, an example of those would be hormonal dysregulation. So maybe you're tracking somebody's mood on a regular basis and you recognize, ooh, I wonder if this person, I know enough about PMDD to know that it might be this, and then you make a referral to the OBGYN. So is it hormonal dysregulation? Is this person assessing their sleep? Are they not getting enough sleep? Are they oversleeping? Are they not eating enough? Are they eating too much? Recently somebody's like, I don't know, I don't think there was one. And after doing a little bit of investigating, we figured out, oh, you mean you just went off your meds and you're like detoxing from them, okay? So she knows that from the past, it took her a couple of days to detox from her meds, and she didn't make that connection, but over time we were able to come to it. So in the behavioral chain, you're always thinking of the domino that hits the other. So here's how it might go in my caseload, okay? I'll give you an example of somebody, and then I will, that I'm making up, and I will tell you how I would do a behavioral chain analysis. Everybody has a copy, or should have a copy of a behavioral chain analysis in their packet. And what I do is I do them regularly in session, okay? On a regular basis. Oh my gosh, I had the foodiest week. I was just eating nonstop. All right, give me a chain. Give me an example of a day. And we'll go through the chain so that they're always thinking backwards. So at the point that they're in when they come to me, the foodie behavior is happening before they recognize what led up to it. And so we'll kind of go from the foodie behavior backwards, kind of like I talked about with the judgments. Judgment would pop up and I'd kind of have to go backwards. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's say, okay, so I'm going to take you through this chain and we're going to think about what the internal and external vulnerabilities are, prompting events, links, problem behavior, and consequences. Okay, so let's say I have a case where there's a client who has a job where they're working on the night shift. Okay, they have a night shift job, and so their sleep is a bit dysregulated during the week always. Okay, so she is always dealing with dysregulated sleep, and it falls in the category of not getting enough. Okay, so that would be, she comes in, she's not getting enough sleep, I already know that. Okay, the prompting event. So say there's a prompting event. She goes to work and she gets yelled at by a colleague for making a mistake in what she did. Okay? The next link, the next one, which I'm calling links, would be any feelings or thoughts that come up around that. So feelings that came up were anger at the colleague and also a feeling of inadequacy. And the thoughts that came up are, everybody's scrutinizing me and I'm always messing up and I'm always doing things wrong and I can't seem to get it right. Okay? So then a problem behavior gets pulled in, okay? Problem behavior may be getting foodie, what I'm calling foodie, which is just sort of light of a binge, okay? Maybe non-hunger eating. I'm calling it a problem behavior because if somebody just ate and they are now eating without hunger, that's why I would be calling it a problem behavior. Okay, so they eat a bunch of food, there was no hunger to start, now they're completely stuffed, okay? That's the problem behavior. The consequence of the problem behavior is that now we have the anatomy of a fat thought. Okay, oh my gosh, I just ate a bunch of food and I wasn't hungry and I probably gained a bunch of weight. Now the solution to my problem is that I gotta change the shape of my body and oh my gosh, I gotta go on diet, okay? When in reality, we were just dealing with a feeling of inadequacy or feelings of anger, okay? A problem behavior got pulled in as a way to sort of push down the problem instead of transcend it, okay? So I may be talking to the client and trying to figure out right away when she presents this to me, her week, okay, this is my week. I know she's always like sleep deprived. There's an interaction, there's a conflict at work. She has all these feelings and behaviors around it. And so instead of addressing it, sort of looking it in the eye, she brings in a problem behavior. And then, we know that it's like, I compare it to the game whack-a-mole at the fair. Okay, the little mole pops up, you push it down. The mole pops up, you push it down. So the feeling of anger and the feeling of inadequacy came up in her. And instead of looking in the eye, writing it like a wave, transcending it, whatever it is that you can do with the behavior, she pulled in another behavior, the problem behavior, that made it worse. Okay? So the mole / the primary emotion comes up. Problem behavior gets pulled in to push it down. Now she has what we call accumulated unresolved grief. Okay? So now she's over here with the consequences and her thoughts kind of continue to reactivate the emotion and they're feeding off of each other. Now she's ruminating, now she's rolling it, now she's suffering, okay? So she comes in and I say, well, all right, let's dialogue. Let's come up with an idea of what you think the target behavior is. Now, I can think of a couple target behaviors, okay? What do people think? For starters, what would your most obvious, and I'm not saying that there is one most obvious target behavior because it can be really different. There's not one right target behavior, but what would you be thinking for starters as a target behavior?